The 5 lights go out for the 2007 British Grand Prix, and Pole Sitter Montoya's gotten away fairly well. It looked like Rubens Barrichello had a good start as well, but we go on board with Massa, but that's not where the action is. We need to go at the front and see what's happening, because Montoya and Sato and Rubens Barrichello looked as if they were all together going into Copse Corner. You can see Felipe Massa behind him. Who have we got? We've got a Toyota, and it's Takuma Sato who leads. He has taken the lead from Juan Pablo Montoya. Now, can Montoya do something about it? There's a three-way battle going into Stowe Corner. This could end pretty badly. Turning right, who's got the lead? It's the Williams that has taken the lead, just about. Is there a car still on his left? Let's try and find out as we go through Club Corner. No! So the Williams does lead. Was in fact Felipe Massa, not Rubens Barrichello. And going round Club Corner, we're having a look at one of the two Toyotas. That is Jenson Button. In front of him is Mark Webber. And there's pretty much as you were before, Webber 4th, Button 5th. And look in the background, we've got the other Williams of Rubens Barrichello. That is the second Williams out of the two who started on this grid. Barrichello started 8th, Massa started 3rd. But it is Massa who takes the lead, having done a double overtake going into Stowe Corner. Rounding Luffield now, and he's already opening up a bit of a gap over Takuma Sato, who did get ahead of Juan Pablo Montoya going into Stowe Corner. In fact, it was before Stowe Corner, it was somewhere going into Copse, I'd imagine, because Maggots and Beckett's you don't really overtake there. Now, what have we got? Kimi Raikkonen versus Jenson Button going into the first Copse Corner, but not making that one stick, and just behind, they're the two Red Bulls, Fernando Alonso and Timo Glock running together. Alonso started 7th on the grid, Timo Glock started 9th. It looks as if Glock has had a pretty good start and has moved up the order a little bit. And now Montoya having a look round the outside of Sato going down the Hangar Straight, but that is not the recommended line. And look at that, the Red Bull of Alonso up the inside of Kimi Raikkonen going into Stowe Corner. Did he make that one stick, I wonder? Off the track has gone Sebastian Vettel. Carefully, don't rejoin unsafely, he's just about okay. But he's dropped way down the order into what I think is last position. And Perez tagging the back of one of the spikers going into Club Corner. And as a result, staying there in 20th position. Ahead of one of the two Toro Rossos. Is that Ralph or is it Wirtz? Wirtz having... Oh, off the track has gone Nico Rosberg, the other Toro Rosso. That was at Abbey Corner. And Toro Rosso having a bit of a difficult time at the moment. Their team boss has actually left the team. And needing a new team boss at Toro Rosso, and Rosberg looks as if he's stuck. Is that a mechanical problem, I wonder, because you'd normally be rejoining in a hurry. Let's find out shortly. But, yeah, it looks as if he is stuck. He might be out of the race already. Just dropping a position. I just saw on the timing screens, Adrian Suttle got past Daniel Ricciardo for 13th position, but Suttle, I think, has just retaken that. So there's a battle there between the two. They can see the gainers and losers at the start. Massa up 2, Webber up 1. In fact, Webber, he's on the march. He's just taken Takuma Sato and Juan Pablo Montoya for second. So it's now Massa from Webber. Glock up 2 positions, so he's had a good start. He's now ahead of his teammate Alonso, but Alonso has just taken that one back. And is that Rosberg rejoining? Yes, it is. Rosberg rejoining, but miles down the order. He's nearly a lap down already. That is a disaster for the Austrian. No, it's a disaster for the German. He does have an Austrian teammate. This is after round 6, actually. After Canada, Ralf Schumacher got dropped by the Toro Rosso team boss in the favour of test driver Alexander Wirtz. And since then, it looks as if the Toro Rosso team boss has left, so there's a job opening available if you're wanting a job at Toro Rosso. Maybe 2 other jobs as well at Ferrari and Williams. Been a while since we've seen those two, but they're okay. And Jenson Button for Toyota up the inside of Montoya into the first corner, side by side through Copse Corner, and Kimi Raikkonen is looking as if he wants a bit of the action as well. Is it going to be... That's nearly 2 wide, nearly 3 going into Maggots. Hamilton versus Rubens Barrichello for 9th position. And there's a Renault ahead of a BMW Sauber. Slight lock-up there for Adrian Suttle. And that's going to put him under pressure from Daniel Ricciardo. It's Robert Kubica who is making the moves, but now Heidfeld having a look at Kubica. Ricciardo having a look at Suttle going into Stowe Corner, but that is not happening just yet. So Heidfeld down 2 positions at the start. He is down now in 12th position. having lost positions to Robert Kubica and Lewis Hamilton, who is now up in 10th position, so that's a very good start from him, from 13th on the grid. The Super Aguri team is doing well at the moment, both their drivers Hulkenberg and Hamilton having scored points in the previous few races. And just the state of the championship at the moment, let's recap that. It's Takuma Sato and Rubens Barrichello who are first and second in the championship at the moment, both on 91 points each. Juan Pablo Montoya is third on 85. Then we got Jenson Button fourth on 76 points. Button having scored a podium last time out at Magny-Cours. As did Fernando Alonso. He's scored 2 podiums in the last 2 races at Magny-Cours and Indianapolis, second at Indy, third at Magny. And he sits on 61 points, 5th in the championship. Then we got Mark Webber, who currently sits second at the moment in the race. He's on 56 points, 4 ahead of 7th place Nick Heidfeld, who's doing quite well for BMW Sauber, unlike that of Sergio Perez, who may well be seeing his seat under threat. He's the only full-time driver who hasn't scored a point yet, as well as Matthias Lauda. And there's some action there between the Spiker of Sutil and the Renault of Ricciardo. Ricciardo has replaced Kobayashi. He did that after Montreal. So Kobayashi relegated to test driver at this point. And there was one more driver swap. That was Felipe Massa, overtaking Jose Maria Lopez's second driving seat for Williams. And that's an all-Brazilian lineup now. Rubens Barrichello and Felipe Massa. So rounding Priory, we've got a Ferrari, that's Jarno Trulli, being chased by Nico Hulkenberg, that's for 15th position. New fastest lap for Mark Webber, a 1 minute 20.8. And just in front of, well, just behind Hulkenberg, let's have another look at that. But for now, we have a look at Felipe Massa, trying to put a lap on it's Nico Rosberg. And up the inside, Nico Hulkenberg versus Jarno Trulli, that's at Copse Corner on lap number 6. And now we switch to Nico Rosberg, down in 22nd position, has now been lapped, so he's in for a very, very long afternoon. We'll have to rely on the retirements of about 12 others if he's going to score any points, after what looked like a mistake going into Abbey chicane, and then just waiting there for a little bit while he sort of regains his head. On board with race leader Massa. And look at this traffic jam. Matthias Lauda he's overtaken Nico Hulkenberg somewhere because he has now moved up to 16th position ahead of the Super Aguri driver. Now he's chasing Jarno Trulli for 15th. And Vettel trying to make some comebacks. Look at that. All locked up is Christian Albers as he is in the middle of a fierce scrap between himself, Vettel in front, and Perez behind. And there's Alexander Wurz lurking as well. So it's going to be a 4-way battle for the 18th position. In fact, Jarno Trulli is doing his train, because he's in 15th, and he's got an onslaught right behind him. So that should be interesting to watch. As we switch to Mark Webber, as he's about to put a lap on Nico Rosberg, down the Hangar Straight. Back on board with Christian Albers through Copse Corner. Now we switch outboard to Jarno Trulli, who had a slow exit out of Copse Corner, and look at that! That was Nico Hulkenberg getting himself back ahead of Matthias Lauda going into Maggots. A brave one. Now he is going to try and do something about Jarno Trulli, who scored a podium at Monaco, actually, where there were only 7 remaining, and looked round the outside, but made the wrong decision, and as a result, Matthias Lauda trying to get back ahead. I think he just about managed that, as 13th place Nick Heidfeld seemingly struggling a little bit in the race because he's now got Daniel Ricciardo to deal with. He's been passed by Adrian Sutil at some point, and Heidfeld struggling a bit. Could be a heavier fuel load, could be the hard tyres not working well for him, although they should be doing quite well in the race. And now, to start another lap, that's 2nd place Mark Webber. On to lap 8 now. It is still Massa leading. Sato still in 3rd, 2.3 seconds behind Mark Webber, as the Australian is being held up a little bit by Nico Rosberg. Into Beckett's. The final right of Beckett's before the left-hand kink of Chapel. And now down Hanger Straight, one of the most famous straights in motor racing, as Ricciardo has a look at Nick Heidfeld for 13th position going into Copse Corner, but only a look, not really alongside at all. And Sebastian Vettel versus Nico Hülkenberg. Matthias Lauda pulling out a bit of a gap now over Hülkenberg, who by the way sits 11th in the championship on 31 points, having scored points in the last 4 races from Monaco all the way to Magny-Cours. His quest for points looks a bit trickier this time because he is down in 17th position, but you never know, we could see a bit of a bonkers race. That was Alexander Wurz making an attack on Sergio Perez as Kimi Raikkonen tries to do something similar on the Toyota in front. That is Jenson Button in front. And is that Takuma Sato in front of these two as well? I think it is. And it isn't, it's Montoya, pole sitter Montoya, now down in 4th position, having made a bit of a tardy start and not really defending his position properly going into Stowe Corner. Could be running a heavier fuel load as well. And Albers versus Perez. Albers looking a little bit slow going through Brooklands, now into Luffield. Everything okay with that spiker? We'll see if he peels into the pits. No, it's all okay, but Perez looking a bit more menacing than before. He's having a look up the inside into Copse Corner, and is that a position again for Perez? Trying to hang on, and out of the race goes Sebastian Vettel. That is a disaster for Ferrari. Pulled off at the main straight, so that obviously happened just as Perez was about to shape for the overtake. And a suspension failure. We've seen quite a lot of those this season. We switch to Massa, race leader, going through the Abbey chicane. The gap between himself and Mark Webber is 2.5 seconds. And Jenson Button versus Montoya into Abbey. Montoya just about missing the apex of the first part of Abbey, but hasn't cost him a position just yet. Now Jenson Button better be careful because he has got Kimi Raikkonen all over his gearbox. We now switch to Sato, who's quite lonely now in 3rd position, and there's Perez. And confirmed he did get ahead of Albers going through the first corner on this very lap. Looking for a race finish as Perez because he has retired from 5 out of the 8 races so far. That's quite horrendous actually. Retired from more Grand Prix than anyone else this season. So it needs a bit of a confidence boost. And we've got Kubica having just lost a position. He's now down to 12th. Who's just overtaken him? It's Adrian Sutter that's overtaken him, so Sutter's going quite well at the moment. Where did he start on the grid? He started 15th and he's up to 11th, so good race pace from the spiker of Suttil, as Jarno Trulli continues to defend vigorously his 15th position from Matthias Lauda. Lauda looking at the outside, going through the Hanger Straight, and that is obviously the wrong way to go because he's had to back out of it before Stowe Corner. Now through the long right at Stowe. Now switching to Button, who has got past Montoya. Button, oh, he's off the track! Jenson Button, having just overtaken Montoya, has made a careless error at Abbey, and he's stuck in the gravel for a bit. Can he rejoin? Will he rejoin? At the moment he is beached, and that is a costly mistake for the driver who sits... Where does he sit? 4th in the championship. Only 15 points behind the leader Sato as well. So yeah, that was a bad one. And Montoya struggling with understeer at the exit of Luffield. Now, I think Jenson Button has rejoined, but way down the order. Down to 20th. So that's moved everyone from Button downwards to Alexander Wurz up a position. As we continue to look at Montoya, Kimi Raikkonen very close behind him at the start of this lap, probably due to Montoya's slight mistake at the exit of Luffield. Bit of understeer, you can see him wrenching the steering wheel right to left, and that's Alonso looking to make up a position at the expense of Kimi Raikkonen. Alonso showing quite well at this stage of the race, and having a look at the inside of Club, but not making that one work just yet, and he runs a bit wide at the exit. So, through Abbey chicane goes to Kumasato, still quite lonely, and no doubt extending the gap over Montoya. That was about another 2 tenths gained in the middle sector. And the middle sector point is actually at the braking zone of Abbey rather than between Bridge and Priory, so that's probably in reference to a very much older variant of Silverstone, because the 95 variant did have the second sector timing beam before Abbey, and then that was changed for 1996. Here's Mark Webber in second position, 2.3 seconds behind race leader Massa. Now the two McLarens side by side at Copse Corner. Kimi Raikkonen moves up a position at the expense of his teammate Montoya, down to 5th now, and now he's got Fernando Alonso to deal with. Now where is Alonso in relation to this lot? And in fact, Glock and Hamilton are quite close behind as well, so it looks as if it may well be still a four-way battle between Montoya, the two Red Bulls. Here's Glock at the inside of Alonso into Stowe Corner, and that is a position gain for Timo Glock. Good move. Alonso riding the curb at the exit of the corner as he moves down from 6th to 7th. Now he's got Lewis Hamilton to deal with. Hamilton continuing his strong run so far from 13th on the grid up to 8th. Then again, I wonder how much fuel he's got. Pit stop strategies, I'm sort of expecting 2 stops all around. We've seen very little variance throughout the season. We saw 2 stops in Melbourne, most did 2 stops at Sepang, although Kobayashi braved it out with a 1 stop and was rewarded with a point for that. Bahrain, again 2 stops. I think Monaco saw mostly 1-stop strategies for the whole field, maybe 1 or 2 rogues doing 2 stops. But here's a textbook 2-stop race at Silverstone. Next race is at the Nürburgring, the European Grand Prix. Effectively, this is the halfway point of the season, round 9 out of 17, as at the inside, that's a position gain for Suttle on Rubens Barrichello. Suttle absolutely flying in that spiker, he's doing a fantastic job. Started 15th on the grid as well. So Hamilton and Suttle, it seems, are the drivers of the race so far in this first stint. And now Fernando Alonso, he was having a look back at Timo Glock at that point. I think I just saw on the timing screen, Perez has just overtaken Nico Hülkenberg for what looked like 16th position. We'll have another look at that. For the moment, we're having a look at Takuma Sato, and yeah, Perez did move ahead of Hülkenberg on that lap, so maybe Hülkenberg got delayed by the battling Trulli and Lauda, and that's allowed Perez to take advantage. I suspect quite likely. Ferrari are without a team boss, it seems, at the moment. Although their team boss, Laura Chung, could make a return at some point. Same with the Williams team boss, Alexei Korobov. This is lap 14 now. It is still Massa leading now by 2.1 seconds over Mark Webber, who we are on board with. It looks as if we're on board from a very, very outward camera, not mounted on the mirror. So whoever's mounted the onboard cameras has done quite a good job, because that camera's staying on so far. Off the track it went Glock, or is that Alonso? It is Alonso. He's now lost that 7th position to Lewis Hamilton, and Alonso's race getting a little bit more tricky. Historically very windy at Silverstone, so it could be that a gust of wind has caught him out a little bit going through Copse Corner, and as a result running wide. But the runoffs at Copse are quite forgiving, plenty of tarmac, although as you've seen there it's not the quickest way around. Barrichello, now he has got Robert Kubica closing him down, so the Williams of Barrichello doesn't look as if it's got great race pace so far. Again, could be down to a heavy fuel load, could be down to a temporarily absent team boss, could also be down to, well, I don't know what else it could be down to, but I think those 2 factors seems most likely. Switching back to Mark Webber. Just looking further down the order, I think Button is close to Alexander Wurz for 19th position. And Webber still closing the gap on Massa, 1.8 seconds now between those two. So if Webber's in good shape for this race, if he can close up to the back of Massa, and if he can do something about Massa, because as mentioned before, Massa is driving for Williams, and Williams at the moment don't appear to have a team boss. Jenson Button versus Alexander Wurz. So they are close together, and starting at this lap, this is their 15th lap now, through Copse Corner. Not close enough to have a think about it, but Button looked close at the exit there. Now then, Massa versus Webber, and it looks visibly closer. Could be seeing a battle for the lead soon, as Matthias Lauda once again choosing the wrong side of Jarno Trulli going down the Hanger Straight. Quick switch to Montoya, who's more comfortable now in 5th position. Raikkonen some 2 seconds in front and Glock 1.6 seconds behind. And Montoya was 2/10 quicker in the middle sector. Jenson Button has taken Alexander Wurz, and Perez has just taken Lauda as well. So Perez's early struggles appear to be balancing themselves out, because from 19th on the grid had a poor start. Now he's made his way up the order to 15th. Now can Perez do something about Trulli? That's another lock-up, this time on Jenson Button going into Abbey. You brake quite hard for that corner. One of the heaviest braking zones on the whole lap, aside from maybe Club Corner. So expect a few lockups going through those 2 corners, maybe into Brooklands as well, which we've just gone through. Now we're into Luffield with Jenson Button, now up to 19th position. His teammates having a much, much better race in 2nd position. And the gap between himself and Felipe Massa, 1.6 seconds. Lauda versus Perez going through Maggots. The left, the right. Now the left of Beckett. Now the right, still at Beckett. And now the left kink of Chapel. You can see a clubhouse on the right. Now which way is Perez going to go? He's chosen the inside, that is correct. And we switch to Massa, but let's keep an eye on the timing screens and see if Perez made that move stick on Jarno Trulli going into Stowe Corner. Yep, up to 14th position for Sergio Perez. Now, into the pits comes Massa. Felipe Massa making an early first pit stop. We're on lap 16, so that's going to move Mark Webber into the lead of the race. Now, how many more laps can Webber do compared to Massa? Now, Trulli's going to lose another position to Lauda if he's not careful. And Lauda taking the cautious approach and staying behind Trulli. Wasn't really close enough to make that overtake stick. So here's your new race leader, Mark Webber, looking for his 2nd win of the season because he won at Sepang. But since then it's been rather slim pickings for the Australian. He's had 2 8th positions since his win at Sepang. That was at Bahrain and Barcelona. Another 8th at Montreal. He did set the fastest lap at Monaco, but crashed on his way to a single point, even though he wasn't classified. In this particular series, if you're in the top 10, you get points no matter what. Then had a retirement at Indianapolis, did Webber, and then finally a 4th position, so some sort of return to form for the Australian. 4th at Magny-Cours, that was. And once again, Lauda still choosing the wrong side, and if he's timed this one badly, Hülkenberg is going to retake that position off of the Austrian. But not quite there. And look at the gap that Perez pulled off over Jarno Trulli. So Trulli really not quick at this stage of the race. For similar reasons as the Williams of Barrichello, I suspect. So rounding Luffield, we are having a look at, is that Kimi Räikkönen? I think it is Kimi Räikkönen. He's about to put a lap on Nico Rosberg. There is Takuma Sato now in 2nd. Webber carried on, as has Sato. So Massa rejoined for the moment in 13th position, but that was a very early first pit stop. Now let's see what Webber, Sato and all do before their pit stops. Suttle having a look at one of the Red Bulls. Suttle has caught up to the Red Bull. Again, I must reiterate, this is a brilliant performance from the Spiker driver, although he has chosen the wrong side going into the Hanger Straight. That's going down the Hanger Straight, so I wouldn't expect that overtake to work out on Fernando Alonso. But anyway, let's keep an eye on the timing screens just in case. Sato, the lap Rosberg, and just exiting Club Corner's Kimi Räikkönen. Gap between Sato and Räikkönen was 4.5 seconds. It is 4.6 seconds, there or thereabouts. Christian Albers versus Jenson Button for 17th position now. So Button pulled away from Wurz, now he's having a look at Albers. So that looked like a bit of chatter from the front wheels of Rubens Barrichello as he is being caught up to by Robert Kubica through Priory. Short squirt before Brooklands. Tighter than 90 degrees. Another short squirt before more than 180 degrees of Luffield. You can see some grandstands on the left. I was in one of those in the 2004 British Grand Prix at the middle of Woodcote. I did see Jarno Trulli's flip. Oh, Hamilton slowing. Has he got a problem? He has indeed. He's pulling out, and look at that, right front wheel airborne. So that is either a punctured tyre or a broken suspension part. That is a shame for Lewis Hamilton. He was doing brilliantly from 13th on the grid. Moved his way up to 6th on merit, and, well, 7th position on merit after Massa's pit stop, but still, brilliant performance. Ended way too soon. Off the track has gone Massa, just about. He was left of the white line at the exit of Beckett's going into Chapel, so that won't do Massa's chances of maintaining the lead any good. He lost 1.3 seconds in that particular mistake, because Trulli went from 4.2 to 2.9. So what else have we got? We've got Glock in the pits. I think Hulkenberg's in the pits as well. Perez has also pitted, because he's now dropped down the order. And still the battle between Albers and Button. Webber's in the pits. Mark Webber making his pit stop from the race lead. Is Sato making a pit stop as well, or is he carrying on? Well, Kimi Raikkonen's carrying on, so he'll gain a position before his first pit stop. Sato did carry on. So for the moment, Sato leads the race, as Glock has a minor outside tyre lockup going into Abbey. That's quite unusual. Keep an eye out for where Webber rejoins. I'm expecting him to be ahead of Felipe Massa, not just because he was on a longer strategy than the Brazilian, but because Massa made that minor mistake. Through Luffield goes the Red Bull of Alonso. Is he going to pit? Well, we switched to Daniel Ricciardo, who's temporarily moved up to 10th position. Matthias Lauda in the pits as well. So he's had to pit first out of himself and Jarno Trulli. That's not great news for the Austrian if he's going to get ahead and possibly score points. There's the lonely Rosberg in 20th, so he has gained 2 positions, but in 40 laps he needs to gain another 10, and that looks very unlikely. There you can see Lauda dropping down the order a bit. Webber's gained a position on Robert Kubica despite having made a pit stop. I wonder if that was on pit exit, or if that was Kubica making a mistake somewhere on this lap. So, another lap for Sato. Ooh, Hulkenberg missing the apex of the final Beckett's complex, as I think Christian Albers is in the pits. Alonso and Suttle also pitting. Let's see where they rejoin. So it's Sato from the 2 McLarens, but pit stops are well and truly underway. As we look at Nico Hulkenberg, who is rounding Club Corner. Now he's switched to Montoya 3rd. Now switching to Rubens Barrichello, who was pretty heavy with fuel, so that explains his drop-off in pace at the early stages. You can see Suttle and Button in the pits as well from the timing screens, as both drivers drop down the order, as is Alonso. So where is Felipe Massa now? He is 9th. So Webber did rejoin in front, quite a long way in front as well. That's exiting Chapel Corner on board with one of the spikers. It is Christian Albers, 2.2 seconds ahead of Alexander Wurz, but now up to 11th position. Rounding Luffield, is Sato going to make a pit stop, or is he going to carry on for another lap? Well, there's Sergio Perez in 16th position, ahead of Matthias Lauda, so despite pitting earlier than the Austrian, Perez is in front. Sato and the 2 McLarens going for another lap, lap 22. Massa made a pit stop on lap 16, and then Webber 2 laps later. As we continue to look at Adrian Sutil. Going through the Abbey complex. Now through the fast bridge corner. Was even faster, and there's been an incident somewhere at Club Corner. If we have a look at that, it looked like a quick spin for somebody. Maybe contact with another driver. So keep an eye out on the timing screens to see who has had an incident. It could have been Jenson Button, actually. He's just dropped behind Nico Hulkenberg. And if we look at the... 4 and a bit seconds behind. So I think Jenson Button's had an incident with somebody going into Club Corner. I suspect making an overtake on somebody, but only succeeding in tagging the back of said driver. Which driver? Who knows? but definitely Jenson Button having an incident. So now Jarno Trulli's moved up into the points thanks to a heavier fuel load in the first stint. End of lap 22. Is Sato going to carry on, or is he going to pit? He's going to carry on, so Sato running much longer compared to Massa and Webber, so this could help him move up the order somewhat. Through Copse Corner, 3.3 seconds, the gap between Sato and Raikkonen. That was 3/10 gained actually by Raikkonen, so he's getting a move on as he goes through Maggots and then Beckett's. Matthias Lauda just ahead of Nico Hülkenberg. That was a wide line through Stowe Corner, so he's lost a lot of time. Now Hülkenberg's within striking distance as Heidfeld now comes into the pits, as does Rubens Barrichello. As does Jarno Trulli, actually. So more pit activity at the end of their 22nd laps. And Alexander Wirtz making a pit stop as well. Now through Club Corner, that's Sato. Keep an eye out on the gaps between himself and Raikkonen. 3.4, still about 3.4. So Sato a tenth quicker on this lap at the moment. As we look at Timo Glock going onto the Hangar Straight. And that's Heidfeld having made a pit stop, rejoining, I think, in 12th position, so between Barrichello and Jarno Trulli. But he's on his own, so he can use this time to set a decent pace. He's a long way out in front of Jarno Trulli. So Heidfeld might have some points at the end of the race, depending on how this middle and indeed the final stint go for himself. Back on board with Sato, who once again continued for another lap. What is the gap between himself and Mark Webber? It is 20 seconds, so I'm not expecting Sato to jump Mark Webber at this first pit stop. But I do wonder what strategy Sato's on, because we are approaching half distance. We're on lap 24 at the moment. If he can carry on for another 6 laps or so, he could make it a one-stop strategy, as could the two McLarens. Webber is actually quicker at this stage, so I do wonder if Sato is attempting a one-stop strategy, and that his tyres are getting a bit older, Webber using slightly fresher tyres, but a two-stop strategy to close the gap between himself and Takuma Sato. So I suspect Webber needs to push like hell. Two Red Bulls are about to go into battle for 8th position, Glock versus Alonso. There should really be a net 6th, maybe a net 5th and 6th. There's Jenson Button making a move, or trying to. Here's Jarno Trulli, trying to hang on to the car through Maggots and Beckett's, but he is doing so. Sato's in the pits. Just as I was about to speculate on a strategy, he is in fact in the pits. Now it'd be good to get a pit stop time on him, although pit stop times do tend to be very long anyway. Kubica also into the pits from 5th position, and we got Daniel Ricciardo up in 6th position, now temporarily moving up to 5th, maybe 4th if Sato's pit stop is particularly long. So a good drive from Ricciardo from 12th on the grid. Could also be one stopping. Well, could be one stopping. Sato was in the pits for 10.3 seconds and has rejoined in 5th, ahead of Felipe Massa, who's going to go way off the track at the exit of Beckett's. But luckily there's a big apron of tarmac on the outside, so he lives for another day. But that's twice he's done that now. So Massa's second set of tyres, not very good it seems, because he's done that twice. We got the two McLarens, 1st and 2nd at the moment, Raikkonen from Montoya, both yet to make their first stops. We'll see if one of them does so at the end of lap 25. As Jarno Trulli going through Maggots and Beckett's. He's got Sergio Perez closing up to him. Perez did overtake Trulli at one point, but Trulli running the longer strategy has obviously helped him to regain that position from the Mexican driver. Kimi Raikkonen into the pits from the race lead. So that will temporarily hand the lead over to Juan Pablo Montoya, but he's got his pit stop to make as well. Now where is Raikkonen going to rejoin in relation to the rest of the field? Daniel Ricciardo also into the pits. That's way wide from Jenson Button, going through Stowe Corner. There's Webber, now moved back up into second position. Will reassume the lead once Montoya makes his pit stop. It'll be interesting to see if the two McLarens can make it into a one-stop strategy. There's Takuma Sato in third position. Won last time out at Magny-Cours, did tack. Pole position and fastest lap as well. So the Grand Slam, pole, fastest lap and win for the Japanese driver. Two-time champion, Takuma Sato, having won it for the past 2 seasons, 2005 and 2006. And the other season, 2004, was won by Kimi Raikkonen. He was driving for Williams at that point. I had a look at the past results actually, and 2005 looked like a cracker because going into the final race there at Shanghai, 5 drivers could still have won the championship. Kimi Raikkonen, Takuma Sato, Michael Schumacher was another one as well. He was actually leading going into that final race, but not meant to be for the brilliant German. Montoya's in the pits. So race leader Montoya handing that lead over to Mark Webber. And Kimi Raikkonen rejoined in 4th, but it should be 3rd once Montoya completes his pit stop. And I'm just having a look at the other positions as well. And Massa back up to 4th, and that's slow, is it, from Mark Webber? Let's keep an eye on this. As Sato in 2nd position, but it did look quite slow down the hanger straight for Mark Webber, so we'll have to keep an eye on whether he's got an issue or not. We're on board with Montoya, but I would really like to see Mark Webber. Let's keep an eye out. It is Alonso in 6th, and he is quite a long way behind Montoya, and I don't think Webber's in trouble. He's okay. Just looked a bit slower than usual going down the hanger straight. And he's got 11 seconds between himself and Takuma Sato, 11.9 to be pedantic, as Trulli versus Perez. Perez not exactly all over the back of the Ferrari driver, but he's done quite solidly. It was a good first stint. Now he needs to do something similar in his 2nd and 3rd stints. On board with Sato, 2nd position. There is Kimi Raikkonen quite close behind the Honda driver. So McLaren's showing quite well in this race, as the perfectly healthy Mark Webber goes through Beckett's and then Chapel onto the hanger straight for his 28th time. Matthias Lauda versus Jenson Button going into the Abbey chicane. That's for 16th position. Button trying to continue his fight back of sorts. And there's Nico Hülkenberg, whose first stint didn't really work out well for him in the end. Did start 17th on the grid, so it was always going to be a bit of a challenge to try and score points, but looks as if down the order in 18th position he might well not score any points. So that will end Super Guri's good point scoring record. Scored points in the last, how many races? Last 4 races. From Monaco all the way to Magny-Cours. As through Bridge goes Kimi Raikkonen, and through Beckett's goes Jenson Button, and Matthias Lauda in front of him. Which side does Jenson go? Does he go left or does he go right? He goes right, that is the correct choice. And upper position will go Jenson Button. Into Stowe corner, there he goes. So his next target is Christian Albers in 15th position. But he's quite a way behind. I think just saw a speck exiting club corner. That could well have been Albers, but it could well have been Perez as well. Webber's extending the gap between himself and Takuma Sato. It's now 12.3 seconds. So it looks as if Webber and Toyota have got his car absolutely spot on for the race. And quite a good effort from 4th on the grid if he does continue on his way. Alonso in 6th, teammate Glock in 7th, so both Red Bulls showing quite strongly as well. Started 7th and 9th. So they've pretty much hovered around the back end of the points, but a little bit higher than where they started. Alonso up 1 position, Glock up 2. And Suttle in 8th position, that's still a standout performance, and he's not too far behind 7th place Glock as well. And that's Massa we're looking at. In 4th position now, despite having led the first stint. Montoya 1.5 seconds behind, so there could be a battle between Massa and Montoya for 4th within the next few laps, because Montoya has gone off the track. Just as I say that he was catching Felipe Massa for 4th position, Montoya's made a bit of a costly mistake going through Priory. I need to be careful with these commentators' curses. And just looking further down the order, both BMW Saubers not in the points at the moment, 12th and 14th. And Heidfeld, well, he qualified, when did he qualify? 10th, but his first stint didn't really go to plan for him. A bit too heavy on fuel, maybe. And he dropped down the order a little bit, but he's now in 12th. How far behind is he compared to the 11th placed runner, which is, it's Daniel Ricciardo. There he goes, right on cue. Going through Beckett's corner goes Ricciardo. Everyone's made one pit stop at the moment, so the first round of stops have now been completed. I'm expecting everyone to make another pit stop at some point. Depends when, probably from about lap 35 onwards we'll be expecting the start of the second round of pit stops. And as Massa was one of the first, I'm expecting him to make a pit stop first. For his second one. So Montoya. He had lapped the Toro Rosso of Nico Rosberg, but he's got to do that all over again now, and that's going to cost him time compared to Felipe Massa. Went from 1.5 down to 5.1 seconds. So that mistake at Priory's cost him 3.5 seconds, pretty much. As going through Stowe Corner, down the Vale goes Mark Webber. There is Massa looking a bit more comfortable in 4th position now. And there's Christian Albers. Suttil's just taken Glock for 7th position, so somewhere on this lap, the Spike has moved up yet another position. Again, I must say, it's been a fantastic effort from Adrian Sutil. Now, how far behind Alonso is Sutil? We'll try and find out the gaps. It's 2.6 seconds. It's not inconceivable that Sutil could be heading for a 6th position here. Alonso some 6.8 seconds behind 5th placed Montoya. In fact, he's 4.5 seconds behind Montoya, so who knows, that battle could go on for a bit. In fact, Glock hasn't given up on Adrian Sutil's 7th position. Be careful going into Abbey, that looked a bit close for comfort. And behind Glock, it's Robert Kubica for Renault, the Monaco Grand Prix winner actually, and that was no mean feat. Resisted pressure from Nick Heidfeld all the way until the end. And in fact, Kubica inherited that from Fernando Alonso, who looked on course to win at Monaco, but he and Montoya got themselves caught up in quite a silly little accident, really, at the Anthony Noakes corner. Alonso was trying to take Montoya around the outside at Noakes, but both seemed to just carry way too much speed going into the corner and just shunted into the barrier. Obviously that helped Robert Kubica. Where does he sit in the Drivers' Championship? I think he sits 8th. Indeed he does, on 45 points. And he's had 3 other points scores, has Kubica. It was a 7th at Sepang, then a 4th at Montreal, and a 9th at Indianapolis. There's Kimi Raikkonen in 3rd position. He's now a 2nd behind Takuma Sato, so the McLaren is definitely quicker at this stage of the race, could be less fuel. Sato was one of the last to make his first pit stop. As Jenson Button looks like he's coasting going into Stowe Corner. Indeed he is, so Jenson Button not having a good time in front of his home crowd. Well, it's ended early. Matthias Lauda struggling to hang on to the car going through Stowe Corner, obviously distracted by the retirement of Jenson Button that he forgot how to drive for a moment. So we'll see what has gone wrong for the Toyota driver. Suspension again. I don't understand these suspension failures. They're meant to be quite strong, but there's been loads of them in this season. Quite a few accidents as well. We've not really seen many crashes. Sergio Perez crashed out of the race at Magny-Cours last time out. I think Daniel Ricciardo was another one as well. And then Kimi Raikkonen crashed out at Montreal from 6th position. And then loads crashed out at Monaco. Actually, not loads. There was more crashes than others, but only about 4 or 5. Trulli's struggling to hang on to the car. He's gone off the track at Beckett's, and Perez couldn't take advantage of that. But is he going to take advantage of that now, going down the hangar straight? He's chosen the wrong side. Expect him to back off. There he goes. Why does everyone do that? And there's Christian Albers having a look as well. Well, he's going to try and close up to these two. Trulli's still quite slow at this point, going on board with Perez, struggling to hang on to the car. He's working quite hard at the wheel as he sits in 14th position. Raikkonen's taken Sato somewhere. We need to see this. Raikkonen has moved up to 2nd position ahead of Takuma Sato somewhere on the circuit. Is that going into Copse Corner or is that going down the hangar straight? But in any case, Sato is retaking that position from Kimi Raikkonen, so I suspect Sato's made a small error at Beckett's, and that helped Raikkonen get in front briefly, but Sato's fought back and retaken 2nd position from the Finn. There it is. Takuma Sato back up to 2nd, and now Robert Kubica is trying to have a look at the Red Bull of Glock, going down the hangar straight, now into Stowe. He's had to tuck back into the slipstream. Here's Mark Webber. He's going to put a lap on, I think that's Alexander Wurz, as Christian Albers goes through Beckett's. Now, let's keep an eye out in front of Albers and see if Perez is making a move. Well, we switch back to Mark Webber, but keep an eye on the timing screens to see if Perez has managed to make a move stick. So now both Toro Rossos are a lap down. Wurz just going a lap down on Mark Webber. And look at this battle between Sato and Raikkonen. I hope we stay with this lot for a bit. Grounding Beckett's now, and Raikkonen quite close behind the Honda driver in the slipstream. Which way has he gone? He's gone the wrong way. Come on! And took him back into the slipstream. So Sato turns right, Raikkonen turns right as well, as you would, because Stowe is a right-hand corner. And now Glock. He's got Kubica all over him. So through Beckett's. Kubica right in the slipstream, but I'm expecting him to go the wrong way, although he's a bit further back this time, but he's still gone the wrong way. And Kubica's going to drop back a bit. There's Rubens Barrichello in 10th position for Williams. And behind Barrichello in 10th is Ricciardo in 11th. Heidfeld is 12th, and then this battle for 13th between Trulli and Perez. We switch to Rubens Barrichello, making a bit of a lock-up going into Club Corner, now rounding the right at the exit of Club Corner, and onto the straight that leads up to the Abbey chicane, where we have seen a few lock-ups here, most particularly from Jenson Button. No such lock-up from Rubens Barrichello as he goes through the two apexes, though he did lose 2 tenths to Daniel Ricciardo. Raikkonen second, so Kimi Raikkonen has made a move properly stick this time, although Sato's still not too far behind. I suspect that was going into Copse Corner because that has just happened. Sato's timing beam is showing red, Raikkonen showing green, and they usually update per sector, so I think Raikkonen overtook Sato going into Copse Corner. And, oh, Mark Webber going off the circuit, so the race leader making a bit of a mistake at Abbey Corner. He's got nobody around him, so what on earth is all that about? But anyway, he's still in the lead, and he nearly lost that lap to... Well, Wurz really nearly regained that lap. Kubica's just taken Glock for 8th position at some point during this lap. But Webber's made that interesting. And Sato still close behind Kimi Raikkonen, so that battle for 2nd still not over just yet. And the battle for 13th still not over between Trulli and Perez. Come on, Sergio, use your brain. take the inside going down the Hangar Straight. And the gap between Raikkonen and Sato, that's 0.6 of a second, and Raikkonen was a tenth quicker on that particular sector, which includes Abbey, Bridge, Priory, Brooklands, Luffield, and the final Woodcut corner. And building up that gap now, so Kimi Raikkonen, now that he's got free air, he's going to try and pump in some good laps. Now, there's a battle for fourth. Massa has now been caught up by Montoya, so Massa's difficult middle stint's about to become even more difficult because he's got a Colombian who's always very fiery. And is Montoya going to make that move going down the Hangar Straight? There we see Rubens Barrichello going through Maggots and Beckett's, and the sky's got a weird colour. It's gone green. Usually means there's a thunderstorm coming, but we'll double check on somebody else's onboard if that's the case. Trulli versus Perez still through Maggots, then through Beckett's. And Perez looks a little bit further behind this time. In fact, he's got Christian Albers closing in on him. Now Perez in the slipstream, he was a bit further back than last time, but I don't think he's close enough to make a move going into Stoke Corner. Oh, goodness me, Matthias Lauda getting all sorts of crossed up going through Beckett's. Sits in 16th position, does the Austrian. And Hulkenberg's only half a second behind. Keep an eye on the right hand side. Nope, not close enough to make a move just yet. And going into Club Corner. So let's do a recap of the order. We've got Mark Webber still in the lead of the race. Then we've got Kimi Raikkonen second. Sato third. Montoya did take Massa for fourth, so I assume going into Stoke Corner, Montoya has taken fourth off of Felipe Massa. We've got Alonso in 6th position at the moment. 7th, I think, is Kubica. Then 8th is Timo Glock. I might have got that one a bit wrong. Hulkenberg getting the apex slightly wrong. It's Suttle in 7th, so Suttle 7th, Kubica 8th, Glock 9th, Rubens Barrichello completing the top 10. And rounding Luffield, and then to start another lap for himself is Nico Hulkenberg. This will be his 38th lap as Mark Webber comes into the pits. So, Mark Webber, he was one of the earlier ones to make his first pit stop, so that sounds about right. Now, Kimi Raikkonen was 11 and a bit seconds behind Mark Webber. How much longer can Raikkonen go? Raikkonen left his first pit stop a lot later compared to Mark Webber, so Kimi Raikkonen could do something about Mark Webber here. Adrian Suttle rounding the Luffield corner. Just kissing the exit curb. Running in a superb 7th for Spiker. Montoya passing the broken down Lewis Hamilton, who's sort of up in the air a little bit. I think the marshals did try and clear this car, but didn't really succeed. Webber, that was right behind Massa, so Webber rejoining from his second pit stop just behind the Brazilian. And considering they were close together during the first stint, Webber's pulled out the whole pit stop pretty much over Felipe Massa. We've got other pit stops going on. We've got Fernando Alonso, who's dropping down the order because of a first pit stop. Well, a second pit stop. Albers is also into the pits as well. So let's see who goes a lot longer compared to others. As Massa turns into Abbey. Turns out of Abbey, and Webber gains 0.6 of a second on the Brazilian on that one sector. So on new tyres, Webber is immediately quick. Trulli pits as well. And I think Perez has just overtaken Fernando Alonso somewhere. There's Nick Heidfeld. We've not really seen much of the German. The man who finished second at Monaco. And is currently running in 11th, mostly down to Alonso's second pit stop. He's quite lonely there, so depending on how much longer he can go on his second stint, on his second set of tyres, Heidfeld may have a sniff at a point, but it's not been a great race for BMW Sauber. Rounding Beckett's goes Adrian Suttle, still carrying on there in 6th position now, thanks to Alonso's pit stop, as Massa now makes his second pit stop. So he went about 24 23 laps, let's call it, between his first and second pit stops. And Takuma Sato making his way through Priory. Timo Glock also in the pits, so the two Red Bulls making their pit stops on consecutive laps as Perez moves up into 10th position now. No doubt thanks to these second pit stops, now we've got both BMW Saubers in the points, temporarily. So there's Matthias Lauda in 15th position, going through Beckett's once again. Not had a great season, has Lauda. He is one of the few drivers who have yet to score points. Best result was an 11th at Sepang. As his teammate is also going through Beckett's, so Sato's nearly a whole lap ahead of Matthias Lauda. Sato in second, Lauda in 15th. Suttel is in the pits now from 6th position. Now he is fairly close to the two Red Bulls, so it'd be interesting to see where he rejoins in relation to the two energy drinks powered cars. And Kubica way wide at Priory, and the Red Bull behind him making no such mistake, but Kubica obviously hung on to that car through the corner because he's still ahead of said Red Bull. It is Timo Glock behind the Renault driver. Trulli is making another pit stop by the looks of it, so expect him to drop down behind these two. Indeed he does. And there is confirmation of Trulli in the pits as Raikkonen puts a lap on Wirtz. Suttel rejoins in 9th ahead of Alonso, look at that! So that is a net position gain for Adrian Suttel. He's on for a 6th. Suttel on for a 6th, and that is definitely a candidate for driver of the day. Alonso is right behind him. Keep an eye out, where is Alonso? He's not behind him, well he is still behind him, but we switched to Montoya at probably an ill-advised moment. Kimi Raikkonen rounds Beckett as we switch to Nico Rosberg, getting a little bit wide at the exit of Luffield. And Trulli's rejoined from his pit stop way down the order, but I think a few more drivers still have pit stops to make, including Rubens Barrichello, who's in the pits right now. And through Maggots and Beckett's once again. So it looks as if definitely Kimi Raikkonen and probably Juan Pablo Montoya going longer than most in this second stint. They went longer in the first stint as well, so that's not at all surprising. Suttel, that was a slow exit, was it? Let's hope so. Just for Suttel going through Woodcut and Luffield, now into Copse Corner, as he has got Fernando Alonso rampant behind him. Sergio Perez now makes a pit stop, as does Rubens Barrichello. So they'll be dropping down the order. There's Barrichello down in 12th position now, so poor race pace from himself in the Williams. And he's rejoined behind the two Red Bulls. We've still got a few drivers with second pit stops to make, and they do include Nick Heidfeld and Daniel Ricciardo, and the two McLarens. But it is Kimi Raikkonen who leads the race at the moment. Let's keep an eye out on the gap between himself and Mark Webber. So let's call it 21 seconds. So I'd probably expect Mark Webber to retake the lead once everyone makes their second pit stops. There's Felipe Massa going through Chapel Corner now onto the Hangar Straight. So Ricciardo's in 6th position at the moment, Heidfeld in 7th, but they've got their second pit stops to make. So that should put Adrian Suttel back up to 6th position. And where is Suttel in the championship? He is 21st, having only scored 1 point all season, and that was a 10th place at Montreal. Just saw a glimpse of Nico Rosberg getting a little bit wide at the first apex of Club Corner, and as a result dropping 3.5 tenths to Jarno Trulli, who's way down in 18th position now. It's not been a good race for Ferrari at all, with Sebastian Vettel retiring from the race earlier on thanks to a suspension failure, and Trulli with poor pace throughout the whole race. As we have a look at Takuma Sato, who's now 3.2 seconds behind Kimi Raikkonen, Webber's 20.7 seconds behind Raikkonen, so just needs to keep it together, and Webber should be okay for his second win of the season. But we've seen Toyota reliability not being particularly great this season. That's why they're second in the championship behind the Williams, but they've had 7 retirements compared to the Williams 3. Other retirements, McLaren have had 4 retirements, 5 if you count the Montoya crash at Monaco, yeah. Honda have had 6 retirements, 3 each for Sato and Lauda. Then Red Bull have had 5 retirements, although 2 of them, their drivers were still classified, Alonso in Monaco and Glock in Magny-Cours. Ferrari have had 7 retirements. Super Aguri have had just the 2, so they've been very reliable for this season, although Hamilton's issue there is at the entry of maggots. That makes it their 3rd retirement of the season. BMW Sauber, Heidfeld's only had 1 retirement, but Perez has had quite a lot, 5 retirements. And then we've got Renault have had 3 retirements, Toro Rosso 4, and Spiker just the 2, so they've also been reliable, have the 2 Spikers. There's Adrian Sutter, who's pulling out over Fernando Alonso now. And Sato makes his pit stop. Is that rejoining behind Felipe Massa? If that's the case, then something's gone a bit wrong for Takuma Sato, because he was well ahead of the Brazilian before the pit stop sequence. In fact, Massa has another pit stop to make. That is why. Sato rejoining behind Webber, and it should be a net 3rd place for the Honda driver and 2-time champion. Ricciardo and Heidfeld still have 2nd pit stops to make. There's Kubica in 10th. So he is ahead of Glock, so he did overtake the German at some point during this stint. Ricciardo's just taken Montoya for 5th, by the way, so Ricciardo using his lighter fuel load to make some inroads before his 2nd pit stop. Ricciardo's having a pretty good race, good 2nd stint. As Raikkonen puts a lap on the Honda of Lauda, there's Sergio Perez, whose race hasn't really gone to plan, still down in 16th position. Behind Alexander Wirtz somehow. There's 3rd place Massa, but he's got another pit stop to make. Speaking of which, Daniel Ricciardo is making his 2nd pit stop. The target for him is to be around Timo Glock. So let's see how his pit stop goes. As Kimi Raikkonen goes through Abbey Corner, he's pulled out over Mark Webber now. He's 22.4 seconds behind. Heidfeld briefly moves up to 6th position now, but with his 2nd pit stop to make as well. Now, where is Ricciardo going to rejoin? There is Nick Heidfeld, suddenly finding himself in 6th position. But should I be expecting him to make a pit stop? Speaking of which, Kimi Raikkonen is in the pits. So where's he going to rejoin in relation to Mark Webber? Gap is 22.4 seconds. Should expect Webber to maintain the lead, but it's going to be a bit close as Timo Glock extends 3/10 over himself and Rubens Barrichello. So there's Felipe Massa. There was Felipe Massa, now here's Alexander Wirtz going through Beckett's, and he's got Sergio Perez crawling all over him. Now, Perez is in the slipstream, and he's quite nicely in the slipstream, so there goes Raikkonen rejoining ahead of Felipe Massa. And I think Hülkenberg was making a pit stop as well. So, about 6 or so laps later than Mark Webber, Kimi Raikkonen definitely is closer to the Toyota driver. Perez made the overtake stick on Alexander Wirtz. There's Montoya in 5th position now. And probably will regain 4th once Massa makes his 2nd pit stop. But Kimi Raikkonen, what is the gap between himself and Mark Webber? As Ricciardo, well, he rejoined behind Rubens Barrichello, and now he's side by side going through Copse Corner. That is a battle to watch out for. it's 6.4 seconds, so Raikkonen has less than halved the gap between himself and Mark Webber between pit stops. It's gone from 11.4 seconds-ish, now down to 6.4 seconds, so pretty much 5 seconds gained out of all that. And Christian Albers gains a position at the expense of Alexander Wurz, as Sergio Perez goes through Beckett's one more time. Exiting Beckett's in through Chapel. Perez now sits in 14th position. Massa in the pits now, so we'll drop down from 3rd to 5th position. Now, last driver to make their pit stop should be Nick Heidfeld. We'll keep an eye on when he comes into the pits. As down the hangar straight, that was Kimi Raikkonen. Now here's Takuma Sato. And here's Alexander Wurz. And yes, Heidfeld in the pits. So, Heidfeld running the longest out of everyone alongside Massa, who... Well, Massa was one of the first to pit, actually, on lap 16. Now he's done pretty much 30-plus laps on that middle stint, so that explains why he was a bit ragged in the middle stint, with 2 separate offs pretty much at the exit of Beckett's, that corner we've just gone through. He was fat with fuel. So Raikkonen, now, can he challenge Mark Webber for the race lead, as Timo Glock getting it all crossed up at Beckett's? That's where the wind is quite strong. As down the hangar straight. Heidfeld has rejoined behind all of this lot, so Glock moves up to 9th. Well, let's start with Suttle first, because Heidfeld was 6th before making his second pit stop. Suttle's 6th, as in the background the Renault and the Williams about to go into combat, Barrichello and Ricciardo. Exiting Club Corner, they're still together, but Rubens Barrichello still has the advantage. He's going to try and hang on for that final point. And Heidfeld rejoined in 12th. Quite a long way behind these two as well, so I think he's settling for that 12th position. 15 seconds behind this battle for the final point. Raikkonen's 5.5 seconds behind, and Sato, well, he's got a Super Aguri trying to unlap himself. So that's not to be recommended from Nico Hülkenberg, but anyway, he's going to try. He's in 17th position. And Sato's up in 3rd, so be careful, Nico. And Raikkonen is catching up to Mark Webber. It's now 5.3 seconds, as Webber is a little bit stuck behind Jarno Trulli, trying to lap the Italian. And Timo Glock in 9th position now, both Red Bulls in the points. Glock 9th, Alonso up in 7th. So, weirdly enough, they've actually... Oh, as Matthias Lauda gets a little bit locked up going through Brooklands. Sato's trying to lap him, so that could account for why Nico Hülkenberg's close, as Kimi Raikkonen sets a fastest lap. A new one, a 1 minute 20 point something, as there's been an incident at Club Corner, so who has had an incident? I'll have a look at the timing screens, but through Beckett's goes Raikkonen. Looks like somebody from down the order. Could be Christian Albers, actually, because he's now behind Sergio Perez in 13th position. As through the hangar straight now. And now into Club Corner, Mark Webber. He's got ahead of Jarno Trulli, now he's got Christian Albers to deal with. But this will help Raikkonen close up a little bit as Wurz gets lapped by the McLaren of Juan Pablo Montoya, who's now in 4th position. So 2 McLarens in the top 4. That'll be good for their Constructors' Championship chances, because with Massa... Well, with Barrichello 10th and Massa 5th, McLaren will take a big gobble out of the leaders, Williams, and Toyota will also take a fairly significant gobble out of the Williams team as well, with Mark Webber leading, although Jenson Button, as we saw earlier, retired from the race. Perez quite lonely in 13th place now. He's now right behind his teammate in terms of positions, but on track he's a fair distance behind. What are the gaps between everyone? So Barrichello Ricciardo, that's not close now, that's 3.8 seconds. So I do wonder if it was actually Daniel Ricciardo who had a little incident at Club Corner, or if Barrichello suddenly got the measure over the Renault driver. Webber versus Raikkonen, it's 3.3 seconds now, so that's going to close up. Raikkonen definitely the quicker driver in this final stage of the race on newer tyres than Webber, some 7 laps newer. Sergio Perez smoking his front tyres going into Abbey Corner, but making the apexes quite well. And he's 4/10 quicker than Christian Albers on that middle sector. So Perez is pretty quick in this final stage, but he's 8 seconds or so behind Nick Heidfeld. Does Heidfeld still have a chance at points? Probably not, no. He's some 11 seconds behind Rubens Barrichello, so he does need to rely on a bit of unreliability in front of him. And there is the German in 12th position going through Beckett's. Now the right-hand corner, which has caught out some drivers. Was that a new fastest lap for Kimi Raikkonen? I think it was. Indeed it was, a 1 minute 20.2, as he's now just 2.9 seconds behind Mark Webber, and with about 8 laps to go now, that's doable. That is doable for Kimi Raikkonen to try and win this race. Meanwhile, Fernando Alonso 2.8 seconds ahead of Robert Kubica as he goes now through Priory. And having a look, Raikkonen's lost a lot of time in the first sector behind the train of Jarno Trulli, 1.5 seconds. So that'll make Raikkonen's job of catching Webber a bit trickier. Thanks to the driver we're on board with. Glock's just taken Kubica for 8th position somewhere on this lap. Where has he done that? But it's now the 2 Red Bulls in 7th and 8th position, so a net gain of 1 for the 2 Red Bulls, because Alonso started 7th and Glock started 9th, but he's moved up to 8th at the expense of Kubica. And Rubens Barrichello still 3 seconds ahead of Daniel Ricciardo in 10th position for that final point. I'm just trying to work out what the championship would look like afterwards, because Williams sit on 138 points, and 5th place for Massa would be 10 points, Barrichello would be 11. Well, Barrichello 1 point, making a total of 11 points. So that would put Williams... Where would it put them? It would put them onto 149 points. Toyota sit on 132, but if Webber wins this race, that would put them on 157. So that would move them ahead of Williams in the championship. But we've got the 2 McLarens running 2nd and 4th, and that will give them 30 points. So they're on 129 at the moment. 30 points would give them the lead in the Constructors' Championship by just 2 points from Toyota. And then Williams would be 3rd in the championship on 149. And it looks like Red Bull would extend the gap between themselves and Ferrari for 5th position, as 7th and 8th would give them some useful points. And Suttil 6th, that is 8 points for a 6th place. That won't be quite enough to put Spiker ahead of Toro Rosso, but will certainly move them to within 1 point of the Italian-based team that used to be Minardi. On board with the BMW Sauber of Perez in 13th position. And I suspect Renault, where are they? They are... Ricciardo's out of the points, that's 11th, no points, and Kubica is 9th on 2 points. So BMW Sauber would still remain ahead of Renault in the Constructors, but not by much. So rounding Stowe Corner goes Christian Albers. And now we switch to Kimi Raikkonen, that's going through Club Corner. Now he's got the gap back down to 2.8 seconds between himself and Mark Webber, so that battle's not over just yet. As onto the hangar straight goes Felipe Massa. Now out of Abbey goes Kimi Raikkonen. Now we switch to Fernando Alonso in 7th position. Raikkonen 2.7 seconds behind Mark Webber. Time is running out though for the Finn to try and claim this would be his first win of the season. Montoya has won a race for McLaren, that was in Canada. And Raikkonen's best results have been 2 third places at Indianapolis and Barcelona. but he's looking for his first win of the season. But he's only got 6 or so laps to go now to try and catch Mark Webber. Through club corner goes Kubica. There is Mark Webber, race leader. Now keep an eye out for Kimi Raikkonen as we switch to Takuma Sato, who rounds Beckett's. Now in terms of the championship, this should keep Takuma Sato in the lead of the championship, and he would extend it by quite a way over Rubens Barrichello. 15 points would move him from 91 points to 106. Webber, if he wins, that's 56 up to 81. Rubens Barrichello second in the championship, 1 point up to 92. Montoya fourth in the race, 12 points, move up to 97. Yeah, so Takuma Sato would extend the lead of the championship if the positions stay where it is. But who knows? Can Kimi Raikkonen catch up to Webber before the end of the race? Well, here is Timo Glock, who is pretty comfortable now in 8th position ahead of Kubica, who's now got Rubens Barrichello catching up to him pretty quickly, so there's a battle for 9th incoming, as now with 5 laps to go. Mark Webber and Kimi Raikkonen. Raikkonen going through Copse corner. Perez is about to go a lap down on Mark Webber, so that's the next obstacle for the Toyota driver to overcome. Underneath the Olympus Bridge. Fans on the left, grandstands on the left. And this is Takuma Sato, who's about to put a lap on Jarno Trulli, as his teammate goes through Maggots and Beckett's, and then the exit of Chapel onto the Hangar Straight. 2.3 seconds the gap between Webber and Raikkonen. Still coming down, but Raikkonen just running out of laps now. He'll give it a mighty good effort. The only obstacle I can see really for Webber is the incoming Sergio Perez. Some 79.6 seconds behind the race leader. And then just looking at the gaps. It could be a 3-way battle between Kubica, Barrichello and Ricciardo for 9th position soon, because Ricciardo's catching up to Barrichello once again. I think Heidfeld's just too far back to really challenge, so looks like BMW Sauber will probably be ending Silverstone pointless. Glock and Kubica 1.7 seconds. Let's keep an eye on that one, because that doesn't look totally safe either. Perez rounding the exit of Beckett's into the kink of Chapel. There is Webber behind. The gap between himself and Raikkonen, 1.8 seconds. Still coming down, but now it's just 4 laps to go. You can see the gainers and losers. Webber and Raikkonen having gained 3 and 4 positions respectively. Sato down 1, Montoya pole sitter down 3, Suttil up 9. Definitely driver of the race for me. 15th on the grid up to 6, and on merit as well. Who else? Perez up 6th, Alba's up 7, but both are out of the points. On board with Felipe Massa, who looks quite lonely there in 5th position. Just behind Massa we've got Suttil 12 seconds behind pretty much, but Massa is 9.5 seconds behind Montoya. So it'd still be useful points for Massa and the Williams team. But Massa did lead the first stint, so could be a little bit disappointed to be down in 5th. Although he did have to grapple with that very heavy fuel load the middle stint. There's Nick Heidfeld. Don't think he'll be getting points, but if something happens between Kubica, Barrichello and Ricciardo, who knows, Heidfeld could suddenly be 9th. But I'd probably say that's a done deal for Quick Nick. There's 6th place Suttil. 5.9 seconds ahead of Alonso before the split. Now down to 5.7, but Suttil looking very comfortable in 6th position. As Kimi Raikkonen goes into Stowe corner. And Hülkenberg down in 17th. It's not really worked out for Super Aguri with Hamilton's retirement. That's a shame for him. He had a very, very good first stint of the race. Like Suttil, just moving up the order steadily as Barrichello locks up his front tyre as he tries to hang on to 10th place ahead of Daniel Ricciardo. That's got Kubica quite close in front of him actually, but but Kubica extending the gap a bit. And now at the inside, Timo Glock having a look at Rubens Barrichello into Kopp's corner. That looked close, but the camera doesn't really care about that. Think it should still be Barrichello in front. It is just about. There's Kubica. We're looking at the wrong Renault here, but he is catching up to Timo Glock. So Kubica has a sniff at 8th place in the final 3 laps for him. But this is the final 2 laps for Raikkonen and Webber. Another new fastest lap. I just saw that, 20.6. So previous mentions of fastest laps being lower than that were a bit erroneous, because the fastest lap is a 120.6. But 2 laps to go, and I'm not sure if Raikkonen can do it. That's well wide for Rosberg, but hanging on through Priory and Brooklands. And through Luffield. And out of Luffield and into Woodcote Corner. But let's see, 1.1 now, the gap between Webber and Raikkonen. Sato's 9 seconds behind Raikkonen, but quite lonely there in 3rd place now. And Montoya's some... Is that Montoya? Montoya's going slowly! That is a late issue for Montoya, and is he going to pull off and retire from the race? Let's keep an eye out on that one, but we'll also keep an eye out on this battle between Webber and Raikkonen. Montoya loses 4th to Felipe Massa. And he has pulled off. That is a shame. Now that does change the Constructors' Championship quite a bit, because now McLaren won't have enough points to... There is Montoya. That's a shame for him. From pole position as well. We'll still be classified, but out of the points, so what's the point? I'll be upset with that one. So McLaren probably won't take the lead of the Constructors' Championship now, unless Raikkonen can do some sort of banzai manoeuvre on this final lap, because it is now the final lap. Let's switch to the other McLaren, because I'm sure he's quite close to Mark Webber going down the Hangar Straight. Now this will move Felipe Massa up to 4th position. 5th place will be Adrian Sutil, and there it is. Webber is still ahead of Kimi Raikkonen, and it's comfortable, but it's not totally comfortable. And I think Mark Webber might well hang on to the race lead. Going through Abbey, it's now from 9 tenths to 8 tenths per second, but just a few more corners to go now, and I think Webber's going to be okay. So despite his newer tyres, Raikkonen couldn't quite close the gap between himself and Mark Webber, although he's given it a good go. It still looks quite close, but there's only 2 more corners to go now, and one of them's a flat-out burst to the line out of Luffield Corner. And to take his 2nd win of the season is the Toyota of Mark Webber. And Raikkonen very, very close behind, not quite close enough, but 4 tenths. That is the closest finish of the season so far. Now keep an eye out for 3rd place Sato crossing the line. There he goes. Takuma Sato in 3rd. And 4th place will be Felipe Massa. But we have a look at Albers and Trulli finishing their races in 13th and 14th place. There's Lauda in 15th. Got a bit to go. There's Hulkenberg out of the points. Exiting Luffield goes Felipe Massa. And to finish 4th goes Felipe Massa. And just on the final lap, we have just seen on the timing screen Ricciardo taking Rubens Barrichello for 10th position. So that's literally just happened on this final lap, as Adrian Sutil caps off a fantastic race for himself to finish 5th. Brilliant. Fernando Alonso will come home in 6th, and with Glock in 7th, that's good points for Red Bull. And Kubica should come home in 8th, Daniel Ricciardo 9th. Both Renaults in the points, and actually that should move them ahead of BMW Sauber in the Constructors' Championship. There's Heidfeld in 11th. BMW Sauber leave Silverstone pointless. They've got work to do. So there's confirmation of the results. Mark Webber just 4 tenths behind Raikkonen in the end. Takuma Sato 3rd. Some 10.7 seconds behind the Toyota driver in the end. Now you can see the remainder of the finishes. Ricciardo and Barrichello just separated by 2 tenths of a second on what looked like a pretty dicey last lap scrap. But we shall see you for the next race at the Nürburgring for the European Grand Prix.